My mother didn't even lift her head from carving the Christmas turkey when she said it. You need to move out. No build-up, no hesitation, just a cold verdict tossed casually between flickering tree lights and the steam rising from the dinner I had paid for. My aunt froze with her fork halfway to her mouth. My sister stared at her plate like it might shield her. I kept my voice steady, even though something inside me felt like it split straight down the center. The room smelled of cinnamon and pine, but betrayal was the only thing I tasted. I didn't yell. I didn't demand an explanation. I just sat there, slowly processing the fact that I had been pushed out of the very home I was keeping afloat on my own. Before I go any further, tell me, where are you listening from? Because I want to know I'm not talking into a void. And when you reach the end of all this, I want you to tell me what you would have done if you were sitting in my seat at that table. My life hadn't always looked like this, like a holiday gathering where I was the only one footing the bill for every warm light, every stocked shelf, every comfort the others enjoyed without thinking. A year earlier, I'd been in my own downtown apartment, small but peaceful, the first place that felt like mine. Mornings were quiet. Plants sat along the windowsill, catching the sun. All my furniture had been secondhand pieces I sanded, stained, and brought back to life. It smelled like brewed coffee and independence. I paid every bill with my own work in IT, and for once, I felt grounded. Then my mother called. Not the usual check-in. This call came in chopped breaths and words breaking in half. She told me the house, the one I grew up in, was on the edge of foreclosure. Mortgage slipping late, utilities about to be cut, savings already drained. She whispered that she didn't know what else to do. That house wasn't perfect, but it was still the last place that held my father in it. The pencil marks on the doorway where he tracked our heights. His old jacket still in the closet, faintly smelling of cologne because no one wanted to wash it and lose that last trace of him. Thinking about losing that place made something deep inside me twist. So I went back. When I walked in with my boxes, my mother cried into my shoulder, holding me like I was a miracle she'd been waiting for. She called me her lifeline. And for a while, I let myself believe her. I broke my lease, cleared out my little apartment in a blur, convincing myself this was temporary. Just long enough for her to get back on her feet. My sister, still in college, told me I was doing the right thing. My aunt said she admired how responsible I was. But weeks blurred into months, and gratitude slowly turned into routine, then into assumption. I paid the mortgage, then the electric bill, then the grocery bill, then the phone line, then everything else my mother suddenly couldn't afford. The pricey skincare, the faster internet, the ingredients for the dinner parties she hosted, where I somehow became the cook, the shopper, and the invisible help. Whenever I gently asked if she'd been applying to jobs, she'd sigh dramatically and tell me I was giving her stress. It's hard for someone my age, she'd murmur, while stretching out on the couch I paid for beneath the lights I funded. My sister would always say, "Be patient, Mom's overwhelmed," but the truth was clearer than anyone wanted to admit. I wasn't a daughter helping out anymore. I was the entire engine of the household, and everyone just assumed I'd keep remming without rest. The change didn't happen in a single moment. It crept in the way cold drifted through old window cracks, slow enough that you didn't notice until your fingers were numb. It started with the internet. One night while I was fixing a server problem for work, my mother marched down the hall, annoyed. She didn't yell, but her voice had that razor-sharp edge she saved for when she wanted to wound without seeming aggressive. "Ever since you brought all your tech junk here, the Wi-Fi crawls like a dead snail. I can't watch my shows." Her shows. The ones streamed on the upgraded plan I paid for. Then the dishwasher became my nightly chore. I'd walk in after a 10-hour shift to find clean dishes sitting untouched, and my mother leaning on the counter scrolling on her phone. "Perfect timing," she'd say. My back's flaring up today. You can empty it. Strangely, her back never flared up during her long shopping trips with friends. My sister, still wrapped in her soft view of her mother, repeated her usual mantra, "She's just stressed. Just give her time." But the truth was clearer than anyone wanted to admit. I wasn't a daughter helping out anymore. I was the entire engine of the household, and everyone just assumed I'd keep running without rest. The change didn't happen in a single moment. It crept in the way cold drifted through old window cracks, slow enough that you didn't notice until your fingers were numb. By early December, the house didn't feel like the place I grew up in. It felt tight around me, like the walls were closing in with every bill I paid and every sigh my mother made. I convinced myself that Christmas would soften things, that maybe celebrating together would remind us we were still a family worth fighting for. So I threw myself fully into the holiday. I cooked the turkey, made the sides, bought the expensive ingredients. I picked small gifts for my mother and sister, telling myself that generosity might thaw the growing coldness. When Christmas Eve came, the house glowed with decorations, the food filled the air with familiar warmth, and my aunt arrived laughing and cheerful. For a moment, I let myself hope. But beneath it, I felt tension coiled tight like wire. And then, without warning, the wire snapped. My mother didn't look up when she said it. "You need to move out." No explanation, no softening, just a decision she'd clearly made long before she spoke it. The knife in her hand caught the dining room light. My aunt's jaw fell open. My sister stared at her plate like it might shield her. I kept my voice steady, even though something inside me felt like it split straight down the center. The room smelled of cinnamon and pine, but betrayal was the only thing I tasted. I didn't yell. I didn't demand an explanation. I just sat there, slowly processing the fact that I had been pushed out of the very home I was keeping afloat on my own. I didn't storm off. I didn't slam doors or break anything, no matter what my mother would later claim. I just stood up, slid my chair back quietly, and excused myself like a guest leaving early. My aunt watched me go with wide, troubled eyes. My sister kept pretending not to see me. In my childhood bedroom, the one still covered in floral wallpaper I despised since middle school, I sat on the bed and waited for the tears that never came. Instead, I felt a hollow clarity wash over me. A full year of excuses, swallowed frustration, and silent sacrifices had burned out completely. So I made a choice. I dragged my old suitcase from the closet. It was dusty, untouched since the day I moved back in to save the house. I brushed it off and opened it on the bed. I didn't bother with sentimental things. I packed only what mattered. Clothes I actually wore, my laptop, my chargers, a handful of personal items. Everything else felt heavy and tied to a life that drained me dry. For the first time in a long time, the next move belonged to me alone. I booked a room at a little motel across town. The confirmation email landing in my inbox felt like finally breaking the surface after being submerged too long. I waited until the house was silent, until the wine had pulled my mother into her deep, oblivious sleep, then slipped out the front door. Snow drifted gently across the yard, soft enough to hush everything under the glow of the porch lights. It looked peaceful, almost peaceful. I drove away without glancing back once. The motel room was small, smelled faintly of old carpet and a humming heater, but it was the first place in months where no one sighed at me for existing. I slept for 10 straight hours. The next morning, I waited for a call or a text, something, anything. But my phone stayed silent. Day 2 passed. Day 3. Still nothing. It didn't feel like relief anymore. It felt like truth.
My absence wasn't a loss to them. It was convenient. And then, just as I was scrolling through potential apartment rentals, my sister finally messaged me. "You won't believe what Mom is telling everyone." The lies she sent me next were so dramatic they almost sounded rehearsed. According to my mother, I had screamed, broken things, stormed out, abandoned her with no warning and no money. She had already called relatives. They were rallying to her side. It wasn't enough for her to push me out. She needed to rewrite the story. Something tightened inside me. Not rage, but resolve. If she wanted a story, I'd give them the truth, and I'd let the truth do what I no longer had the energy to argue. I didn't fire back at my mother's lies. Not at first. I let them sit, let them grow, let them spread until the picture she painted was so exaggerated that even people who adored drama started to raise their eyebrows. Meanwhile, I stayed in that tiny motel room surrounded by quiet that felt both foreign and familiar. I went to work. I kept searching for apartments. I waited for the storm she created to reach me. And it finally did. The first sign was my aunt, the one who lived out of state, calling me. Her voice soaked in judgment. "I heard you threw a tantrum on Christmas," she said. "Your mother is devastated. How could you walk out on her like that after everything she's done for you?" Everything she's done for me. I almost laughed. Almost. But instead of fighting, I just listened. Let her speak. Let her believe the script my mother had fed her. Because I was done arguing behind closed doors. If I said one word in anger, it would be twisted. If I defended myself privately, it would be ignored. If I confronted my mother directly, she would cry on cue. There was only one thing I could do: pull everything into the light. So that night, in the motel's dim lighting, I opened my laptop and wrote a single post. No anger, no name-calling, no emotional language, just facts. A clean timeline of the year I paid every bill, every grocery trip, every payment that kept the house afloat. I wrote how Christmas dinner unfolded with no shouting, no scene, no broken dishes. I wrote that I left quietly because I was told to leave. Then I ended it with one sentence. "I'm safe, and I hope we all find honesty from here forward." I hit post, then I turned off my phone. The next morning, when I powered it back on, it nearly lit up the motel room. Notifications poured in. Texts, messages, comments, missed calls. The truth had cracked my mother's version right down the middle. My cousin, normally quiet, messaged first. "I'm sorry. I knew something was off. If you need anything, I'm here." Another relative wrote, "Your mother didn't tell us any of this. Are you okay?" My aunt, the one who scolded me 24 hours earlier, backpedaled instantly. "I didn't know the whole story. I'm so sorry, dear. That must have been so difficult." My grandmother left a voicemail asking if we could talk. My sister sent a panicked text. "Mom is freaking out. She says you're turning the family against her." For the first time in a year, people were seeing me. Not the villain my mother invented, just me. In the middle of that chaos, my mother didn't call. Not that day, not the next. But a week later, on a gray afternoon, when I had just moved into my new studio apartment, a bright space with big windows, cheap flooring, an air that felt like possibility, someone knocked on my door. A soft, deliberate knock. I knew who it was before I opened. My mother stood there in the hallway, holding a bakery pie in a plastic container like it was a peace treaty. Her makeup was carefully done, her expression arranged into something between sadness and hope. "I heard you moved here," she said with a soft smile. "Thought I'd stop by. I brought dessert." I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. Not rudely, but firmly. This wasn't a visit she earned the right to step into. She lifted the pie slightly. "Aren't you going to invite me in? It's cold." I didn't answer her question. Instead, I asked my own. "Did you come to apologize?" Her face flickered just for a moment, like a candle trying to stay lit. But instead of humility, indignation rose. Well, she said slowly, I don't think I need to apologize. We both made mistakes, but that post you made, that was hurtful. You embarrassed me. There it was. The truth, not the emotional kind, but the structural core of who she was. She wasn't sorry for what she had done. She was sorry she had been exposed. I breathed in deeply. The hallway smelled faintly of someone's cooking and something metallic from the elevator. It felt grounded, real. This isn't about embarrassment, I said quietly. It's about everything you expected me to carry. It's about how easily you discarded me when I stopped being useful. Her eyes blinked, stunned that I said it out loud. She opened her mouth, ready to cry, ready to manipulate the moment back into her control, but I didn't let her. This is my home, I said, still calm, my life, and I'm done being your safety net. Her eyes hardened. So that's it. After everything I've done for you, you're shutting me out. The irony almost stung. After everything I did for you, I corrected. You told me to leave. I simply listened. For a long moment, she didn't speak. She just looked at me. Really looked. Maybe for the first time in years. She saw someone she couldn't bend anymore. Someone who wasn't afraid of her disappointment, her stories, her guilt. She saw someone she couldn't control. I stepped back toward my door. Take care of yourself, I said, and then I closed the door. Not with anger, not with drama, just with finality. Through the pee-hole, I watched her standing there, stunned, holding the pie like she no longer knew what it meant. For a moment, she set it on the floor and walked away down the hallway. I didn't pick it up. Inside, my new apartment felt warm, sunlight drifting in through the windows, walls echoing with nothing but peace. I realized then, this wasn't revenge. This was freedom. Life settled into something quieter after that day. Quieter, but fuller. My studio apartment, as small as it was, became the first place in years where every bill, every object, every moment belonged entirely to me. I woke up to sunlight instead of sighs. I made coffee the way I liked it. I worked without being accused of using up the internet. Silence finally felt peaceful, not weaponized. Word traveled through the family, of course. Some relatives stayed neutral, others reached out offering support now that the truth had aired. My grandmother asked to meet for lunch. My cousin helped me move the last box from storage. My aunt from out of state apologized again, this time without excuses. My sister was the one who changed most. She started coming by for coffee, asking how I budgeted, how I found the apartment, how I knew it was time to leave. One afternoon, she whispered, "She's starting to turn on me now." I squeezed her hand. "When you're ready," I told her, "I'll help you pack." For the first time in a long time, our family wasn't built on fear, just truth. Christmas used to feel like obligation to me, like a stage where I had to perform the role of the dependable daughter. Now it feels different, not because the season changed, but because I finally did. What I learned is simple. Love without respect is just dependency. Family without boundaries is just a trap. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away quietly and let the truth speak louder than you ever could. My mother still tells her version of the story, I'm sure, but it no longer defines me. I have my own home, my own peace, and the freedom to build a life that isn't measured by how much I can carry for someone else. If you've ever had to pull yourself out of a family that kept taking without giving back, you're not alone. Tell me where you're watching from and share your story in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story resonates with you, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next.